Good day everyone! Today I will be discussing the principles of marine and coastal ecosystem, focusing on biodiversity, productivity, and ecosystem functionality, and how their interactions affect the ecosystem health and human activities, particularly in the maritime context. My name is Captain J.M. Masuela, and this presentation aims to connect ecological science with practical maritime and environmental management. Marine and coastal ecosystem are among the most productive system on Earth. They produce the fisheries, protect coastlines, regulate climate, and provide livelihood to the million of people worldwide. However, these ecosystems are increasingly stressed by overfishing, pollution, coastal development, and climate change. Understanding how biodiversity, productivity, and functionality interact is essential for managing these environments sustainably. Let us begin with biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to the variety of life at genetic species and ecosystem levels. In marine and coastal environments, these include organisms such as the phytoplankton, fish, corals, seagrasses, mangroves, and marine mammals. High, high biodiversity increases ecosystem stability and resilience. When multiple species perform different ecological roles, ecosystem can better withstand disturbance like the storms, temperature changes, and the pollution. The loss of biodiversity, especially keystone species, can disrupt food webs and reduce the ability of the ecosystem to recover from stress. The next is productivity. Productivity refers to the rate at which the ecosystem converts energy into biomass, mainly through the primary productions of phytoplanktons, seagrasses, and the mangroves. Coastal ecosystems are highly productive due to abundant nutrients and sunlight. This productivity support the fisheries, aquaculture, and the food security, particularly in coastal communities. However, productivity can also decline or become harmful when ecosystems are overloaded with nutrients, leading to eutrophication, algae blooms, and oxygen depletion. Ecosystem functionality refers to the process that keep the ecosystem working. These include the nutrient cycling, habitat provision, carbon sequestration, shoreline stabilization, and energy transfer through food waves. Functional ecosystems provide critical services to the society. Mangroves and coral reefs reduce wave energy, protect the ports and coastal infrastructure, and store large amount of carbon. These services operate continuously and cannot be fully replaced by artificial structures. Biodiversity, productivity, and functionality do not operate independently. High biodiversity often leads to higher productivity because species use resources in complementary ways. Increased productivity supports complex food webs, strengthening ecosystem functionality. When biodiversity declines, productivity may decrease and ecosystem functions weaken. This results in reduced fisheries yields, habitat degradation, and loss of ecosystem services. Thus, ecosystem health depends on balance and interactions of all three principles. If biodiversity is the library of life, the loss of single volume such as keystone predator or seagrass species can trigger cascading effects. Keystone species regulate population balance and energy flow. Their removal can cause uncontrolled population growth of certain species, habitat damage, and declining fish stocks. This collapse in productivity directly threatens food security for millions of people who depend on marine resources for nutrition and livelihood. Beyond what we can see, ecosystem functionality acts as a silent economic engine for a blue economy. Coastal ecosystem provides storm surge protection, carbon sequestration, nursery habitats, and water purification, services that support the shipping, fisheries, tourism, and coastal infrastructure. This ecosystem services operates at no direct financial cost and cannot be fully replicated by the man-made infrastructure without massive investment and environmental trade-offs. At a certain point, ecosystem decline becomes more than an environmental issue. It becomes a maritime security and insurance concern. Degraded ecosystem increases risks such as the coastal flooding, port damage, fishery collapse, and pollution incidents. These risks raise insurance costs, liability exposure, and operational uncertainty. Under the polluter pays principle, responsibility for environmental damage increasingly falls on the industries and operators, influencing future maritime operators and coastal livelihoods. Human activities increasingly influence biodiversity, productivity, and functionality. Major pressure include overfishing, coastal urbanization, habitat destruction, nutrient pollution, climate change, and maritime transport-related pollution. These pressures weaken ecosystem resilience and reduces the capacity of the maritime environments to support sustainable human use. Effective maritime environmental management must integrate ecological principles into policy and operational decisions. These include using biodiversity indicators, productivity measurements, and ecosystem function assessment to evaluate ecosystem health. Protecting marine ecosystem is not only an environmental responsibility, but also a strategic investment in maritime safety, economic stability, and long-term sustainability. In conclusion, marine and coastal ecosystem function through the dynamic interaction of biodiversity, productivity, and ecosystem functionality. When these three elements are in balance, ecosystem remain resilient and productive. When they are disrupted, both environmental health and human activities are at risk. Understanding these three principles allows maritime professionals and policymakers to make informed, evidence-based decisions that support sustainable ocean and resilient coastal communities. This ends my presentation, and let us welcome Sir Alvarez for the next part of our presentation. Again, this is Captain J.M. Asuela. Thank you and mabuhay!